You forgot how to begin. You don't even know when it happened. But one day, something in you just stopped. Not out loud, not with a bang. Just a quiet pause that never unpaused. This video is for anyone who's stuck, who's scared to start, who doesn't remember what excitement feels like anymore. Because the longer you wait to start, the heavier the fear becomes. I remember when I was in my late 20s, I met this guy named Chris, 36 years old, taking piano lessons from a teacher who mainly worked with 8-year-olds. At first, I thought he was joking. He wasn't. He'd say it casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Yeah, I just came from practice. Miss Laura says I need to stop using stickers to track progress. But honestly, I kind of like them. And he'd smile. That kind of soft smile people wear when they're doing something that feels quietly right. What struck me wasn't the piano. It was the fact that he was okay being the only adult in a room full of kids. No ego, no apology. Just a man who decided it wasn't too late to begin again. It made me pause. Because most people his age, they're busy managing expectations, careers, reputations. But Chris, he chose wonder over pride. He chose learning over looking cool. And in that moment, he didn't look out of place. He looked free. Twice a week, he'd squeeze himself onto this tiny wooden bench, knees practically to his chest, between lessons with Emma and Tyler. They were 7 and 9, he was 36. No one made fun of him, but no one expected much either, and yet there he was, showing up. Not just physically, but fully. Hands trembling a little, brows furrowed in focus, learning chords that came easily to the kids beside him, but took him weeks. His teacher handed out gold star stickers. Most adults would laugh at that. Chris didn't. One day he played Ode to Joy without looking at his hands. A simple piece. But for him, it was everything. He got a sticker that day, a shiny gold one, stuck right there on the page. And I'll never forget what he told me after. I've never been prouder of anything in my life. Not his job, not his car, not his degrees. Just that moment. Because it wasn't about the music. It was about what it meant. He started, he stuck with it, and he grew. There's a kind of quiet courage in doing something you're not good at. Not for applause, not for success, just for the experience of trying. And most adults, we lose that somewhere along the way. We choose competence over curiosity. We choose certainty over discovery. Because being new at something means being exposed. And being exposed means risking embarrassment, judgment, failure. So we stick to what we know, what earns praise, what feels polished, safe, but suffocating. But Chris, he wasn't trying to prove anything. He wasn't doing it to post about it. He didn't need anyone to be impressed. He was just there, on that little bench, doing something for the joy of doing it. No outcome, no pressure, no perfection. And that's when it hit me. Being a beginner again isn't about weakness. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you to be impressive. It's about getting back to wonder. And what Chris reminded me of, psychologists actually have a name for it. Ego threat. It's not just the fear of failing. It's the fear of what failure says about you. Because if you've always been the smart one, the gifted one, the one who figures it out fast, then being bad at something doesn't just feel uncomfortable. It feels like betrayal. It challenges the identity you've built your self-worth on. It whispers, maybe you're not who you thought you were. And so, instead of risking that, you protect the image. You stay in your lane. You only do what you're already good at. Not because you don't want to grow, but because your brain decided it's safer to stay impressive than to be real. So instead of risking that discomfort, you stay stuck. You stay good at what you're already good at. But growth doesn't live there. Growth lives in the awkward stage, the messy middle, the place where you're bad and insecure and new. You stay in the familiar, where no one sees you stumble, where you always know what to say, and where being good feels safer than becoming great. You stay where the compliments are predictable, where the applause is easy, where your identity isn't questioned. Because trying something new, that means letting go of what you already know. It means risking embarrassment. It means trading confidence for clumsiness, at least for a little while. So we build lives around what we've already proven. We pick careers that validate our strengths. We avoid hobbies we're curious about because we don't want to look ridiculous. And slowly, without even noticing, we shrink. Not in ability, but in courage. Not in talent, but in wonder. Not in years, but in the permission to try again. But growth doesn't live in expertise. It lives in awkward handshakes with the unknown. It lives in the shaky breath before your first lesson. It lives in clicking publish when your voice still trembles. It lives in failing in front of others and not running away from yourself afterward. Growth lives in the messy middle, the part where you show up even though you're slow, even though you're not sure, even though no one's clapping yet. That's the part most people avoid. Not because they lack potential, but because they were never taught to be seen in the becoming. Because somewhere along the line, we started believing that if we weren't good right away, we shouldn't bother at all. But the truth, every master you admire once looked like a joke to someone. Every skill you wish you had started in a room full of uncertainty. Every dream that came true had a messy, cringy, clumsy beginning. And if you can sit in that discomfort, if you can walk through the middle, if you can let yourself be seen there, you've already done something most people never will. Because being a beginner isn't weakness. It's proof that you're still growing. Steve Martin knew this. At the peak of his career, after decades of sold-out arenas, blockbuster movies, and worldwide fame as one of the greatest comedians of all time, he did something most people wouldn't dare to do. He started over. He walked away from the stage and picked up a banjo, not as a gimmick, not for a laugh, but because something inside him still wanted to grow. He had played a little since he was young, but songwriting, writing lyrics, building melodies, he was a beginner again. And it showed. The songs were clunky, the words didn't land, the rhythm didn't flow. There was a massive gap between the brilliance he was known for and the awkward, uncertain drafts sitting on his desk. For someone who had spent years being celebrated, adored, understood, this was a different kind of silence. The kind of silence where no one claps. The kind of silence where even you question your own voice. Most people would have quit. But Steve didn't. He kept showing up to the blank page, kept writing songs that didn't work, kept creating things that didn't sound right. He kept being bad at it. Until one day, he stumbled across a book called The Stuffed Owl, a bizarre little collection of hilariously terrible poetry. And instead of dismissing it, something clicked. What if he didn't try to be brilliant? What if He just let himself be terrible. So he did. He leaned into the absurd, started writing the worst poems he could think of, on purpose. Not because they were good, but because they were freeing. And in those bad poems, he found something. He found rhythm. He found storytelling. He found heart. Those awful poems became odd little songs. The songs became a strange, funny, deeply human album. And that album, it won a Grammy. Think about that for a second. One of the most celebrated comedic minds of our generation reinvented himself at the cost of his ego, risked being seen as foolish, and ended up with another legacy in a completely different lane. Not because he chased perfection, but because he allowed himself to be bad. He embraced the cringy stage. He welcomed the awkward. He dared to look ridiculous. And that willingness? That was his superpower. Because greatness doesn't come from being brilliant all the time. It comes from being brave enough to look unpolished while you're on your way there. We've romanticized mastery, the final product, the flawless performance. We love the standing ovation, the viral moment, the neatly edited reel of success. But no one claps for practice. No one posts about the first 37 drafts that didn't make sense. No one celebrates the hours spent learning to not get it right. And that's the problem. We start to believe that if it's not perfect, it's not worth doing. That if we're not instantly good at it, we probably never will be. So we stop before we start. We shrink ourselves to fit what we already know. We lock the doors to anything unfamiliar and call it wisdom. But what if that messy middle, the stumbles, the cringe, the missed notes and awkward beginnings, what if that is the real proof of courage? Because anyone can do something they're already good at. But it takes a different kind of strength to be seen struggling, to show up for day one when everyone else is on chapter 20, to look around and know you're the worst in the room, and keep coming back anyway. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's how all greatness begins. Not with applause, but with discomfort. Not with mastery, but with movement. A shaky first try. A quiet decision to begin, without guarantees. That's the real gold. And if you've been holding back because you don't want to look silly, because you're afraid of being seen starting from scratch, let me remind you, you're not behind. You're just waiting to be brave. You might not realize it, but playing it safe has a cost. A quiet one. A hidden one. The kind of cost that doesn't show up on a receipt, but you feel it every time your chest tightens, when you see someone else doing what you wish you had the courage to try. Because when you play it safe, you don't just avoid failure, you accidentally avoid your own life. You scroll instead of paint. You organize your desk instead of write. You research the perfect strategy. Instead of just showing up with shaky hands and a first attempt, you plan, you prepare. You convince yourself that tomorrow will be the day. But most of the time, tomorrow becomes next week. And next week becomes a month. And before you know it, you've become someone who's really good at waiting, but hasn't moved in years. The fear of failing quietly shapeshifts into the habit of not trying. It hides behind productivity. It disguises itself as wisdom. It whispers things like, just wait until it's the right time. Once things settle down, then I'll start. I just need to feel more ready. But readiness is a moving target. And here's the part no one wants to admit. You don't feel stuck because you lack ambition. You feel stuck because You've gotten used to the safety of not beginning. You've traded movement for mastery. You've confused inaction with control. And maybe the most heartbreaking lie of all is the one that says, you missed your chance. Like somehow, the dream had a deadline. Like joy has an expiration date. Like there's an age limit on becoming someone new. But you didn't miss anything. It is never too late to be what you might have been. George Eliot. You're not too late. You're not too old. You're just out of practice when it comes to believing in yourself. And yes, starting now will be awkward. Yes, it might take time. And yes, you may not be instantly good at it. But isn't that the most human thing in the world? To begin again? To become something new, even when it scares you? A ship in harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. John A. Shedd. You weren't built for scrolling through other people's courage. You were built for creating your own. And starting doesn't mean you'll win right away. It just means you're finally in the game. Every expert you admire once looked like a joke to someone. The only difference? They started. So maybe today, you don't wait for perfect. You just pick one thing and begin. Badly. Bravely. Honestly. That's how all great things begin.